Good morning and welcome to Coffee with Tom and Joanne. I'm Tom Matthews.
And I'm Joanne Toronto. Thanks for joining us. Today, we wanted to talk about going the extra mile in a multiple bid situation for a seller. So right now, we know that the market is heavily leaning in the seller's favor. And so when properties come to the market, if they're priced properly, they tend to get more than one offer. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about handling that scenario and how we like to go the extra mile to craft the perfect scenario for our client. So Tom, why don't you start off with, how do we present and how do we compile the data for our clients before we present?
Yeah, so what Joanne and I like to do is we put together an Excel spreadsheet and we just break down all the offers. We look at down payment, financing options, home inspection, all the contingencies. We start calling brokers, we make phone calls, we package everything together to prepare to present to the sellers. And the reason we want to do this is we want to try to help to put all the information out on one page to make it as easy as possible for the seller to absorb the information. Concurrently, we send the spreadsheet and all the offers to the sellers so they have all the information in front of them. But what we're trying to do is we want to help the seller understand what is the best offer in terms of price and then terms. Because what we want to do is then come up with a strategy on what our next move is. So Joanne, typically, what is the next move?
So the next move is taking a look at these offers with the seller and then using some of the information that we've gathered from the brokers about the buyers. So maybe the buyers are living with parents and they have a lot of flexibility. Maybe they're in a lease that's ending and they have less flexibility. That if the closing date is something that's important to our client, we will consider that those scenarios. But mostly what we want to do is make sure that we've done a thorough job explaining the impact of each piece of the terms that are written in an offer. So it's not always about price, but we know price is really important in this market. So the first we could look at is we could categorize them by price, then we could categorize them by price and terms and see if there is a standout offer that has an excellent scenario for our client.
And if there's not a standout offer, this is where going the extra mile starts to come into play. Because what we can do is say to the seller, listen, you have 5 very similar offers. Rather than settle, because the offer that you would settle with is great. It's above your asking price. It has good terms. Why don't we go back and ask for a best and final and offer all of the buyers some direction? So the direction would be offer us your best and final price. These are the terms that the seller would love to see. Home inspection in X days, purchase and sale in X days, financing commitment in X days, closing at this timeline, and give everyone a chance to put forward their best and final offer. And that extra step requires effort. It requires 5 additional phone calls from Joanne and I. It requires a little bit more effort. But what we have come to with our business model over the last 18 years is saying to sellers, do you want to hire the agent who's going to go that extra mile? Does it matter to you, Mr. and Mrs. Home Seller, if we can put an extra $10,000, $20,000 in your pocket by taking a couple more steps? So Joanne, does that matter to a lot of people?
I think it does matter. And here's why. Because things happen in life. Let's say, for example, you are building a new home, you're in the home stretch, the house is looking like it's going to be, ready for move-in at the end of April. And you say, I want to put my house on the market and I want to close at the end of April. And everything goes well and you put your house on the market and you have buyers that can close at the end of April. But there's one buyer who says, hey, if you need extra time, we'd be willing to either push the closing back or close and allow you to stay for another 30 or 60 days after closing, which then would give you the flexibility to say, hey, Mr. Builder, or, when are we going to get those garage doors? When is that last cabinet coming in? And then you can sort of plan when you get your CO and close on your new construction, you can plan your move that way and then not be under pressure to say, oh gosh, we have to close at the end of April and our house is not going to be ready for another week. We're going to be in a hotel for a week. Some people, it doesn't matter. They'll go on vacation for a week, but generally speaking, transitioning from one house to another, you're not going to want to go on vacation while your belongings are on a truck somewhere waiting to be delivered. So going the extra mile to get the peripheral information from the buyers and their agents is really, really important because it gives you a holistic view of what's out there in terms of what's being offered by the buyer pool. But then also you can then take those terms and put them into the best scenario for the seller. Giving a buyer's agent a little bit of direction is not a bad thing. And it's not, telling one person something and not to another. That would not be ethical. But what we try to do is give people a little bit of direction on what the seller would like to see. And I know that as a buyer's agent, I really like to get that direction because then I can craft the perfect offer and try to get the winning bid. So,
because otherwise you're guessing. Otherwise, as a buyer's agent, you're guessing on what's the most important to the seller. And if a seller has hired a true fiduciary who's representing their best interest, their job is to convey that information to the other party to create a true win-win. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's like the art of negotiating. People always say to me, does it matter if you're a good negotiator? And I say, yeah, it does. If you want to have a great outcome, you should hire the best negotiator that you can hire to represent you in the sale of your property.
Agreed. Well, I think this was a great conversation today. And for you sellers out there, if you're interested in listing your home in this market, please consider us. My name is Joanne Toronto.
And I'm Tom Matthews.
Cheers.